Having made millions of viewers laugh with its witty dialogue and distinctly British style, Are You Being Served? 1972 became an icon of 1970s television. But behind that laughter and vibrant color, the cast carried their own private sorrows, loneliness, illness, and quiet death. Today we look back at them, the individuals who dedicated their lives to art, then quietly departed amidst regret. Stephanie Gathercole as the lift voice, the lingering sound in the silence. Born on September 12, 1944 in England, Stephanie Gathercole began her career with a clear musical voice, her pride since her early 20s. When she was just 28 years old, she was invited to contribute her voice to Are You Being Served 1972. But that glory was only a flicker quickly fading. No one knew her face, only her voice echoing in the small recording studio among people who never saw her directly. As she grew older, Stephanie retreated further into her own world. Without marriage or children, she lived alone in a small flat in suburban London surrounded by audio tapes and pronunciation lesson manuscripts. Those who studied with her recounted that for a time she would remain silent for weeks, communicating only through handwritten notes because her voice had become so hoarse she could not utter a sound. Chronic lung disease gradually suffocated her passion and her life, a cruel irony for someone who lived her entire life by her breath and sound. On June 22, 2011, Stephanie passed away at the age of 66, as quietly as her life itself. There was no grand funeral. No long line of mourners, only that voice, ringing out every time the lift doors opened in the show, like a distant echo of a solitary soul that once touched the hearts of millions of viewers. Mollie Sugden as Mrs. Slocombe, The Last Smile. After the studio lights. Born on July 21, 1922 in Yorkshire, England, Mollie Sugden was an icon of 1970s television comedy. With her flamboyant hair and exaggerated style, she made all of Britain roar with laughter in Are You Being Served when she transformed into Mrs. Slocombe at the age of 50, a woman who was strangely sharp and charming. But behind that laughter, Mollie lived a life steeped in solitude, where the spotlight became a mask concealing pain that no one saw. For many years, she carried the title of Queen of Satire. But backstage, Mollie frequently suffered from severe depression. As the glamour of Are You Being Served slowly faded, she struggled with being confined to a single role seen only as a symbol of the past. Her career stalled, her friends passed away one by one, and audiences had forgotten her real name. The price of laughter for Mollie was the final silence. In her final years, heart disease and pneumonia led to frequent hospitalization. Although she tried to maintain her optimism, it was said that Mollie often sat alone in her hospital room staring at the TV, replaying old episodes, where her past self was still smiling radiantly. On July 1, 2009, she passed away at the age of 86, concluding the journey of an artist who made the whole world laugh but who was ultimately left alone in a quiet room with the echo of her own smile from years ago. John Inman as Mr. Humphries, the man who laughed to hide his tears. Born on June 28, 1935 in Preston, England, John Inman became the soul of Are You Being Served, 1972, when he transformed into Mr. Humphries at the age of 37. His character, witty, charming, eccentric, and full of energy, sent audiences into fits of laughter. He was seen as an icon of British comedy, representing a unique, bold, and utterly charming camp style. But behind that brilliance was a solitary soul constantly fighting prejudice, discrimination, and private sorrow that never faded. As a gay man during a period when British society was still full of bias, John had to live two parallel lives, a bright artist on screen and a lonely person in real life. He once confided that I made the whole world laugh, but when I came home there was only the sound of the clock and the darkness. The popularity of the Mr. Humphries role typecast John, making it impossible to escape that comedic image, even though he yearned to be taken more seriously. In his final years, John contracted severe pneumonia requiring lengthy hospital treatment. The illness rapidly weakened him and his voice, once the soul of Mr. Humphries slowly faded. On March 8, 2007, John Inman passed away at the age of 71, ending the life of a man who made the world laugh, but who had to use laughter to hide his tears. In the memory of his fans, he will always remain an icon of joy and of the sorrow hidden beneath the stage lights. Frank Thornton as Captain Peacock. The keeper of etiquette in an outdated world. In the glorious decade of British television, Frank Thornton appeared on screen as the epitome of propriety and gentlemanly humor. He was born in Dulwich, London on January 15, 1921, and when he took on the role of Captain Peacock in Are You Being Served, 1972, he was 51 years old, the prime age for a veteran actor. With his military straight posture, stern gaze, and polished delivery, Frank made people believe he was born to be a symbol of the old guard, elegant, self-respecting, and somewhat lost in a changing era. But when he left the set, his world was chillingly quiet. Frank had few friends, lived privately, dedicating most of his time to reading and caring for his wife, the only companion who understood his loneliness. He once said in a rare interview that when the screen goes dark, all I have left is an empty room and a sigh. Having dedicated his entire life to the stage, he witnessed close colleagues pass away one after another, leaving him alone amidst a generation of artists that was slowly vanishing. Frank Thornton took his last breath on March 16, 2013, at the age of 92. He passed away peacefully without fanfare or a large funeral, just as he had lived composed, proper, and a little solitary. What remains for the audience is the image of the captain standing stiffly in his old suit, offering a slight smile amidst laughter that has long gone silent. Wendy Richard as Miss Brahms. The Fading Rose. After the BBC lights. On the small screens of 1970s Britain, Wendy Richard emerged as an icon of youth and vitality. Born in Middlesbrough on July 20, 1943, she was just 29 when she played Miss Brahms in Are You Being Served, 1972. Her sweet voice, mischievous smile, and bright charm made Wendy one of the most beloved faces on the BBC. But behind that innocence, her life was shadowed by loss, a repeating cycle of tragedy between fame and private pain. Her father passed away when Wendy was only 10 years old, leaving a deep emotional wound. Her mother, who was once her sole support, also died of cancer, marking the beginning of Wendy's long battle with the dreadful disease. Although known to millions, Wendy always carried an insecurity, fearing being forgotten or replaced. She once admitted that after every scene of laughter, she would often cry alone in the dressing room, a moment no one heard but herself. Breast cancer struck in the late 1990s, and Wendy fought for years in silence, never abandoning her work. When the disease recurred, she chose to stop treatment to live out her final days in peace. On February 26, 2009, Wendy Richard passed away at the age of 65 beside her fourth husband, the only person who witnessed her final gaze. On screen, Miss Brahms remains eternally young, but in real life, Wendy departed like a beautiful, poignant rose, fading in silence. Nicholas Smith as Cuthbert Rumbold, the manager lost amidst the laughter. With a clumsy smile, bewildered eyes, and a trembling voice, Nicholas Smith made audiences unable to help but laugh every time Mr. Rumbold appeared. But that very clumsiness was the perfect metaphor for his real self, an artist who lived his entire life in the instability between applause and the void in his soul. Born in Banstead, Surrey on March 5, 1934, Nicholas was drawn to the stage very early on, when he took on the role of Mr. Rumbold in Are You Being Served? 1972, he was only 38 years old, young enough to crave fame but experienced enough to understand that the spotlight is sometimes the sweetest trap. Following the show's massive success, people remembered him as the silly manager, but few knew he was a serious stage artist who once dreamed of performing in Shakespearean plays. As the audience's laughter faded, Nicholas sank into oblivion. His single role became a shadow too large to overcome. In his final years, he lived quietly in the countryside, away from the stage lights, spending time writing music and walking alone in the park near his home. Chronic heart disease weakened his health daily. On February 6, 2015, Nicholas Smith passed away at the age of 80 without fanfare or major announcements, leaving only the image of the man who smiled awkwardly on the set, as if concealing a sorrow that no one understood his entire life. Trevor Bannister as Mr. Lucas, the comedian who smiled in the face of fate. Among the cast of Are You Being Served? Trevor Bannister brought a distinct energy, mischievous, confident, and somewhat rebellious. Born in Dewsbury, West Riding of Yorkshire on August 14, 1934, he took on the role of Mr. Lucas when he was only 38 years old, becoming the youthful face representing the witty and quick-witted working-class employees of Britain. Everyone imagined Trevor to be as lively off-screen as the character he played, but in reality, he was sensitive, easily hurt, and always felt obscured within the audience's own laughter. After leaving the series, Trevor's career did not go as smoothly as expected. He transitioned to the stage, participating in many small plays in towns across northern England. Without the television spotlight, he lived simply in a small house with his wife, whom he always called his only remaining audience. In his final years, Trevor often said he felt like an old poster still hanging but no one looking. The light of fame that once surrounded him was now just a memory, and he, the artist who once made so many people laugh, had to face the emptiness of being forgotten. One April morning in 2011, while preparing for a stage performance, Trevor collapsed due to a sudden heart attack, passing away at the age of 76. The stage lights were on that day, but he never walked out to greet the audience. The laughter that once rang out because of him now became a quiet farewell, a final smile defiant in the face of the fate he always knew would arrive. Arthur English as Mr. Harman, the last juggler in his life's circus. There are people born to make others laugh but who never find joy for themselves. Arthur English was one of them. He was born in Aldershot, Hampshire on May 9, 1919, and when he stepped into the role of Mr. Harman in Are You Being Served 1976 Season 4, he was 57 years old, a veteran artist who had spent nearly half his life in vaudeville before being known to television audiences. With his unique voice and witty style, Arthur became the last joker of an older era where comedy still carried a bit of dust and sadness behind the lights. But off-screen, his life was a relentless series of losses. His first wife passed away early from cancer, leaving Arthur to raise their child alone amidst constant touring. He continued to immerse himself in work like someone fleeing loneliness, using laughter to conceal the emptiness. Despite his fame, he lived simply, often falling into financial crisis due to illness and prolonged treatment costs. In his final years, he suffered from severe arthritis, making movement painful, but he still tried to appear in small shows. "Because the audience is the reason I still exist," he once said. On April 16, 1995, Arthur English passed away at the age of 75 in his old apartment in London. There was no applause, no audience laughter, only an old photo on the dressing table and his acting hat placed next to the bed. Like the quiet goodbye of an artist who dedicated his life to making the world happy, though he himself was never truly at peace. Harold Bennett as young Mr. Grace. When old laughter turned into a farewell bell, people still remember Harold Bennett's gently shaking smile as young Mr. Grace, the forgetful but lovable old chairman of Are You Being Served? Few realized that behind those clouded eyes and faint voice was not acting, but the real breath of an old man who had nearly finished his life's journey. Born in Hastings, Sussex on November 17, 1898, Bennett was 74 years old when he entered the set in 1972, becoming a living testament to a time when elderly artists could still stand thanks to the joy of performing rather than robust health. Before coming to the screen, he had been a secretary, then a soldier in World War I, carrying his youth through 2 wars and a fading art scene. His life passed in obscurity until laughter on television found him, late but gentle like a comforting gift. However, his body was no longer able to keep pace with the lights. During the filming years, Bennett often had to rest after each scene, sometimes falling asleep on the set, but still adamantly insisted on continuing to act. As long as they are still laughing, I am still alive. After the final season aired, he nearly vanished from the public eye. Heart disease gradually weakened him, and on September 15, 1981, Harold Bennett passed away at the age of 82. No one knows if he heard the audience's laughter for the last time, but perhaps in that moment he smiled, as if the final comedy act of his life had just concluded at the right time. Arthur Brough as Mr. Grainger. The artist who closed the door. After the laughter died, there are people born to stand under the lights, but who depart in silence. Arthur Brough, born on February 26, 1905 in Petersfield, Hampshire, was one of those people. When he played Mr. Grainger in Are You Being Served in 1972 at the age of 67, the audience only saw a foolish, constantly complaining yet lovable old man. No one recognized that in the character's eyes was a lifetime dedicated to the stage that had faded with age. Before coming to television, Arthur was the man who kept local repertory theater alive. He founded the Folkestone Repertory Theater, writing, directing, acting himself, and closing the doors whenever ticket sales were insufficient to pay the actors' wages. He did not seek fame, he only needed to act to hear applause, however sparse. But fate was not kind to those who loved the stage too much. After 40 years together, his beloved wife passed away in early 1978. That loss extinguished the last light in his heart. Colleagues recounted that from that day on, Arthur hardly smiled genuinely again. He still came to the set, still delivered his lines, but his voice slowed and his eyes looked distant, as if searching for an audience that had vanished. When the series took a break, he went home, the house now eerily empty, and never returned. On May 28, 1978, Arthur Brough passed away at the age of 73. No extravagant funeral, no stage lights, only an old photo of him in his Grainger role with a half-smile that reflected his life. The artist who finally closed the door after the laughter had ceased. As the final light in Are You Being Served faded, the applause dissolved, leaving a quiet void where the people who once entertained the world now had to face themselves. They lived and died for art, but the price of laughter was sometimes utter solitude. And when that stage closed, one might think the story of the artist's pain also ended. But no tragedy like light always finds another form to exist. In the same year, 1972, in a faraway place, another series was born, The Waltons. Gone were the dazzling lights of the city studio, replaced by a small wooden house on the Virginia hillside, where the midday rooster calls the evening smoke and family dinners seemed filled with peace. But behind the camera, amidst the warm good nights, were artistic souls also enduring their own losses, illnesses, and private tragedies. If Are You Being Served exposed the dark side of laughter, the Waltons exposed the sad side of happiness. Their tragedy did not stem from fame, but from the role itself being too beautiful, too peaceful for real people to step out of. Will Geer as the grandfather. Will Geer was born on March 9, 1902. In 1972, at age 70, he stepped onto the small screen as Zebulon Zeb Walton, the warm, witty, and wise grandfather in The Waltons. His performance earned him an Emmy in 1975, and he quickly became known as America's grandpa. But behind the smile was a life torn apart by politics, repression, and personal solitude. At age 11, Will's father abandoned the family, and he was raised by his grandfather, whose love of nature deeply influenced him. Though he earned a master's degree in botany, Geer pursued a career in acting and became known for socially conscious theater. His rising career was crushed in the early 1950s during Hollywood's communist witch hunts. In 1951, Will was blacklisted after refusing to name colleagues before the House Un-American Activities Committee. He lost work income and reputation. Forced from the screen, he toured labor camps and community halls, surviving with help from fellow artists and the folk songs he once performed alongside Woody Guthrie. His personal life was just as complex. He married actress Hera Ware, with whom he had 3 children, but they divorced in 1954. Despite the split, they remained close, an unusual bond in Hollywood. Less publicly known was his romantic relationship with activist Harry Hay in the 1930s. In a time of intense social stigma, Geer lived a life divided, part open, part hidden, always under quiet emotional strain. In response to Hollywood's rejection, he founded Theatricum Botanicum, an outdoor theater filled with plants mentioned in Shakespeare's works. It was both a creative sanctuary and a symbol of resistance, a haven for expression, politics, and healing. Will Geer died of respiratory failure in 1978 at the age of 76. His net worth was estimated at only $1 million, a modest sum for someone who once stood at the summit of his craft, yet chose principle over profit. Ralph Waite, as John Walton Sr. Ralph Waite was born on June 22, 1928. In 1972, when he was 44, he stepped into the role of John Walton Sr., the strong, steady patriarch of the Waltons. Across 9 seasons, Ralph portrayed a father filled with wisdom, compassion, and quiet discipline, a rock for the family during the Great Depression. But behind that idealized image was a man battling private grief and searching for meaning. A former Presbyterian minister with a master's degree in theology from Yale, Ralph's life took a dramatic turn in 1964 when his 9-year-old daughter Sharon died from leukemia. The tragedy shattered his faith, and his first marriage plunging him into deep despair. No longer finding solace in the church, he turned to acting as a new form of spiritual expression. His personal life was a series of heartbreaks. Ralph married 3 times, divorced twice, and raised 3 children while quietly carrying the emotional wounds of loss. During the early years of the Waltons, he battled severe alcoholism, an ironic contrast to the noble, upright father he played. The guilt of living a double life eventually forced him into rehab. He later credited the young cast of the show, who he considered his second family, with giving him the strength to recover. Though the Waltons revived his life and career, Ralph yearned for a deeper impact. He ran for U.S. Congress 3 times, driven by a passion to change society. Unfortunately, all 3 campaigns ended in defeat. The most painful came in 1998, when he lost to Mary Bono, the widow of Sonny Bono. These political failures drained both his finances and emotional reserves. Despite earning between $5,000 and $10,000 per episode during his Waltons years and landing roles in NCIS Bones and The Bodyguard, Waite lived modestly. His net worth at the end of his life was estimated at around $2 million, reduced by legal costs, family responsibilities, and campaign expenses. Ralph Waite passed away on February 13, 2014 at age 85 in Palm Desert, California, due to age-related causes. He was laid to rest at White Plains Rural Cemetery in New York, his birthplace bringing his journey full circle. Fittingly, the final episode of NCIS Season 11, in which he had played Gibbs' father, was dedicated in his memory. Ellen Corby as Esther Walton. Ellen Hansen. Corby was born on June 3, 1911, in Wisconsin. In 1972, at the age of 61, she took on the role of Esther Grandma Walton in The Waltons, a performance that would earn her 3 Emmy Awards and a Golden Globe. With her deeply moving portrayal, Ellen became the embodiment of a loving yet stern grandmother. Wise, no-nonsense, and full of heart. But before she reached that iconic status, Ellen endured decades of quiet struggle, loneliness, and professional neglect. She began her Hollywood career as a script girl, contributing behind the scenes without credit or recognition. For years, she appeared only in minor roles, maids, secretaries, background characters, always just outside the spotlight. Her personal life, too, was marked by disappointment. In 1934, she married director Francis Corby, who was over 20 years her senior. Their marriage brought little joy and ended in divorce in 1944, when Ellen was just 33. They had no children, and she spent many years quietly living in the emotional shadow of that separation. In the years that followed, Ellen found companionship with Stella Lucetta, a woman who became her lifelong partner and emotional anchor. Though they never publicly defined their relationship, those close to Ellen knew that Stella was far more than a friend. Their private, enduring bond brought depth and tenderness to Ellen's portrayal of Grandma Walton. Then came the biggest blow. In 1976, at the height of her fame, Ellen suffered a massive stroke at home. It severely affected her speech and mobility, leaving her struggling to care for herself. Though she returned to the Waltons, her dialogue was drastically reduced to reflect her real-life condition. One haunting moment captured the truth behind the character when she shakily delivered the line, "Pray, pray, pray," upon hearing of the Pearl Harbor attack. It wasn't just acting, it was her soul speaking. Ellen Corby passed away on April 14, 1999, at the age of 87. Her estimated net worth at the time was around $2 million, a figure quietly eroded over 2 decades by medical expenses. Still, she left behind a legacy built on hundreds of performances and unwavering emotional authenticity. Mary Jackson as Emily Baldwin. Mary Jackson was born on November 22, 1910, in Milford, Michigan. At 61, she stepped into the role of Emily Baldwin, the sweet, sentimental, and quietly heartbroken sister in the Waltons. Emily, the forever hopeful romantic, clinging to memories of a lost love, seemed to reflect elements of Mary's own life. Long before she ever stepped onto a Hollywood set, Mary Jackson lived a life of modest stability. She earned a degree from Western Michigan University and became a school teacher during the Great Depression, a time when job security was rare, especially for women. But something within her longed for more than chalkboards and classroom walls. With remarkable courage, she left the predictability of teaching behind and chose the uncertain path of the performing arts. For decades, Mary traveled with regional and touring theater companies, often staying in budget hotels, earning just enough to get by. Her days were filled with rehearsals and cramped dressing rooms, her nights with the applause of small-town audiences. Though the work was grueling and the pay meager, she pressed on with quiet perseverance. Over the years, Mary appeared in numerous productions, both on stage and on screen. Her television credits included appearances in Hazel Airport, Coming Home, and other notable shows of the time. But she was often cast in the background, supporting characters whose names didn't make the headlines. Stardom eluded her, but she carried on working steadily, always professional, always present. Recognition finally came when she joined the Waltons as Emily Baldwin. While hers was technically a supporting role, audiences quickly embraced Emily as one of the emotional anchors of the show. There was something timeless and familiar in her portrayal, something that made viewers feel like they had known her their whole lives. It was the role that gave Mary Jackson the visibility and affection she had quietly earned over decades of hard work. Even at the height of the Waltons, Mary's earnings were modest. She reportedly earned between $500 and $1,500 per episode, a humble sum even for that era. But she wasn't in it for the money. She lived simply and with intention. Mary's marriage to Griffin Bancroft Jr. was a lasting one. They were together for an incredible 68 years. However, the couple never had children. In her later years, as friends and co-stars passed away, that absence contributed to a quiet sense of solitude. Still, she remained deeply connected to her roots. Mary continued to handwrite letters and correspond regularly with people in her hometown of Milford, where she had once helped raise funds to restore the historic wooden bridge over the Huron River. Privately, Mary was introspective and poetic. Those who knew her recall a woman who found beauty and simplicity, who read poetry aloud in a calm voice, and who seemed to carry her characters with her long after the cameras stopped rolling. In her final years, Mary faced her greatest challenge, Parkinson's disease. The illness slowly affected her speech, her ability to move freely, and her once bright presence. But she fought it with dignity, never allowing the disease to eclipse the quiet strength that had defined her life. On December 10, 2005, just 2 weeks after her 95th birthday, Mary Jackson passed away peacefully in Los Angeles. She was laid to rest in her hometown of Milford, Michigan, a full-circle moment for a woman who never truly left the small-town spirit behind. At the time of her passing, her net worth was estimated at around $500,000. It wasn't a fortune, but it reflected a life lived with humility, resilience, and grace. Journey of the Waltons is more than just a story of family. It's the legacy of remarkable actors and creators, some of whom left us too soon. Which moment on Walton's Mountain touched your heart the most? Share your memories in the comments and help keep the spirit of the Waltons alive. Like, follow, and stay with us on this journey of love, loss, and legacy.